Now, one of the things I just now saw was um, the city council in Tacoma is holding back on doing the whole upzoning, right? If you're not familiar with upzoning, it basically means that they're going to allow developers to literally build in single family areas, duplexes and things like that. Basically, anything that's going to be between 1 to 3 stories tall, right in that area. And so they call that middle housing or whatever they want to coin it. But basically, it would have been a plan to allow for anywhere in the city that is mainly along transit areas to be able to do that. And meaning transit areas, any place where there's bus traffic, they were going to be able to allow that to happen. And I assume some areas may not have been even within that, and they were going to allow it. And so I said, be sure to join the Discord, which is in the description box below. I forgot to say it. It's one of the things that is very important. A lot of people get on there, ask questions, seek help. There's plenty of times when there's things I don't know, but there's people that do know. We discuss everything from crypto to health to Tacoma stuff to housing to you name it. So be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Um, so I thought this was not a good idea because you're going to end up with people who live in a single family home, and some homes are kind of close. And for example, our neighbor next to us is pretty close. That neighbor's quite a bit of distance away. But let's say that they all of a sudden tore that down and they built a duplex that was, 2 or 3 stories tall. Well, I mean, we're right next door, really, to a multi dwelling unit or development. And some folks don't want that. With more people, there's added issues, parking, noise, all of that stuff, right? And so folks are not wanting that, especially when you have a development on both sides of you and you're this little bitty tiny piece of jam in the middle. It really is not good, and it hurts people's property values because obviously people aren't going to want to live in a house where you have neighbors that can look down on top of your yard, top of your house, all of that. So the city has pulled back on that because they felt that that is not a good, may not be a good strategy or approach, which I agree. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't know who listens to these videos, probably nobody. But I've said this before. Main corridors in the city should be upzoned. If you want to do some upzoning, main corridors of the city is the place to do the upzoning. One of the areas is Pacific Avenue. Pacific Avenue should be given priority. Number 2, priority. I'm going to discuss number 1. You guys probably already know what I'm going to say. But number 2 should be Pacific Avenue because it is a very long road. It's going to be the first road that's going to get BRT, bus rapid transit, in the next few years. And it has a lot of pockets that are great for development. You have areas where there's retail development that was yesteryear that's just sitting there, vacant. You have corners and intersections that are just vacant spaces. So if the city would incentivize developers to build along this area and you have the upzoning in that area along those corridors, I think that would make a whole lot more sense, obviously, because you're developing transportation that will allow more people to move in either direction, away from downtown or towards downtown. And one of the big things too is if you were to do this, keep in mind that other services should follow as well, right? There should be requirements for these developers saying that, hey, you need to have service industries that will definitely be a part of this project. Make plans for that. Make plans for these different things, and a certain amount of retail and a certain amount of this and a certain amount of that, certain amount of landscaping, which they already have to do, but increase that. Even go as far as saying, kudo points for art. right? Outside art that can be displayed, even bigger points for that. Incentivize them to do those things. And plenty of developers would be like, shoot, yeah, if I can get these different perks, why not? Right? Give them instead of the 12-year tax thing, offer a new 12.5-year tax abatement where you basically, as long as you put in, art installation that is so much money, then you get a half a year extra of, because we offer 8 and 12, 8.5 years or 12.5 years. If you do that and you put in art installations, then there you go. So these are things that make good sense, because Pacific Avenue can be designed with very limited parking. It can be a corridor where people can walk to bus rapid transit stations. That would be the first thing. Your zoning the entire city is going to be all over the place. It's really going to be all over the place. And I think that having Pac Avenue as the first test of this is basically saying we encourage transit-oriented development. We're encouraging transit-oriented development here. So this area here, this corridor, it's easy for you to apply for a permit to build up, meaning that you can go from 1 story all the way up to 10 stories, right? Because along this corridor is very few housing. There's certain areas where there's housing, but a lot of that is not. And so it makes things a little bit better. Obviously, you have certain sections where you have a bit of a restriction where there's a lot of housing. But other areas where it's not, and it's business or commercial, allow that to do its thing. That would be my suggestion. Second suggestion would be the number one priority would be downtown. I've said this over and over again. The Dome District is way underdeveloped, and when you look at downtown, it's way underdeveloped. I think that one of the big issues is there's not enough momentum for developers to build up. They build 4 or 5-story buildings, and we still say, well, it's not making a dent. And the reason why it's not making a dent is because in Seattle, there's a company that's building, actually, we're manufacturing the panels. It's a prefabricated tower that's 15 stories tall. It's a residential tower. And this company is building it, and it's going up rather quickly. Right in our port area is a company that's manufacturing those panels. Basically, the panels are ready to go. Its installation includes plumbing and light fixtures and all of that, pipes, all ready to go. All you got to do is just connect them and boom. Right? Hold on. So, they're doing that, and they're using, it's 100 and something people, 100 and something units, but it's a very small building, taking up a very small footprint, but 100 and something units. Whereas here, you have apartments that are mid-rises that maybe go to 8 floors. Most of them are lower than that take up a good chunk of land, valuable land. And there's nothing in the city code that says, hey, if you're wanting these tax abatements for the downtown corridor, we need for you to build up, right? Maybe offer them more of an incentive to build up, saying that, hey, stop taking up so much land. The Trent Development Project that's going to be developed, that's taken up a huge area, 2 blocks long, and less than 400 units. So there's not the right people, in my humble opinion, that are pushing for this. I think that, there's been people who said, you know what, you should run for office because you come up with a lot of good ideas. I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't think they have all the answers at all. But I think that there are certain things that make sense. And when you're trying to have a more walkable city and one that relies on transit, you need to make sure that those types of things happen. So the upzoning across the whole city, I think that wouldn't have been a good idea. And it wouldn't have really moved the needle much because we're talking tiny little incremental pieces of housing. That doesn't really help. I think if you're wanting more density and you're allowing for yards to have 2 homes, for example, that's different, right? But to be able to allow a developer to build a 3-story structure right next to a 1-story house, I just don't think that that's the way to go. And so it's good that they're pausing that. I would say that the city should be treated differently. Downtown Tacoma and Dome District should be one area by itself. The rest of Tacoma is a separate, completely different area. And I think that really and truly, when we're looking at outside of Pack Avenue, all these other places, 6th Ave, out there towards the Narrows, all of those areas should be on a case-by-case basis, right? But when we're talking about Pacific Avenue, that whole stretch should be allowed to be upzoned, meaning that 1 floor all the way up to 10 or whatever, that should be something that is allowed. It would literally, imagine what that would look like from the sky or a skyline view. You have this long corridor of nothing but somewhat taller buildings. People will realize, like, oh, similar to Atlanta. If you look at Atlanta, their skyline follows the subway. There's a reason for that, right? Not all of it, but there's a good portion of some of the newer parts of their city. So if we were to do that, I think that it would make more sense and would be a big incentive. Some developers won't build in an area that doesn't have mass transit. Cozy is an example. Now, I don't know if they consider BRT their form of mass transit. Typically, they like rail, but you could get a developer like that that could start building into areas like Pack Avenue, what they're building downtown. So instead of building downtown and wasting land on a tiny little 5-story building, they can use Pack Avenue for that. There's other areas of the city that can use that. Downtown should be taller structures. Now, again, I'm not expecting a 40-story building, but 15, 20-story tall buildings, I think, would be a much better fit for downtown Tacoma. We're running out of space, valuable space. You have it in Seattle where developers will knock down buildings just to put up another building. And these are decent-sized structures they will tear down just to build something else. I have a feeling that's going to be Tacoma's case in 20 years. A lot of these buildings that are put up now are going to be knocked down. These are wooden structures, by the way. First floor is concrete, but the rest is wooden. A lot of those are going to be knocked down, right? They're not built to be something that's there for 80 years. They're built to last for maybe 30 years max, and then kind of that's it. So there needs to be more of a push, in my opinion. I'm just a business owner. What do I know, right? But in my opinion, it should be that downtown has this focus of taller structures when we're talking about residential, office, and everything else. And then areas like Pack Avenue, which is more of a commercial area anyway, should be allowed to do the upzoning without any sort of, checking to see if they can or going to the zoning and planning commission. All that's done. All that red tape is gone. There's certain areas where you're restricted and you're only able to build in these areas to protect homeowners, because there are homeowners, single-family homeowners, to protect them, but in these other areas you can build up. That to me makes a whole lot of sense. You tell me what you think. I don't know, maybe I'm missing the mark here, which happens, but be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.